so it is day 3 of the Camaro accessory drive installation. I am just about ready to put the water pump on. I went in here and cleaned the block up with a little bit of sandpaper and brake cleaner. So that is ready to go. I have my water pump over here. This is a stock 5th gen ZL1 LSA pump. Installing this is pretty straightforward. It's just the 6 bolts, the gaskets. I never torqued these down. I did a lot of GM pumps. Just tighten the 13mm bolts down by hand with a 3/8 ratchet and you're good to go. Once this is done, we will be ready to go ahead and finally put the aftermarket stuff on from LSX Concepts. So I'm gonna get this pump on and then we'll get started on that. Alright, so the pump is on. Only thing I found was that the steam vent T over here, it's pretty much just touching the pump, but I could solve that. Just a little flat head here, bend it a little bit, and that's all clear. Basically, from my understanding, it just takes air out of the cylinder head and it bleeds it off into the rest of the cooling system. So I got this piece online years ago when I first did the swap, and all it is, it's just basically like a T. It goes inline to the upper hose and it has this little 1/4-inch pipe thread fitting here, and that just allows you to tee that in like that, so it has a place to go and for the air to bleed off into the upper hose there. I think on the cars from the factory, like the 4th gens and most of the other GM trucks or cars that come with that, it actually goes to the top of the radiator. But I'm still using a 3rd gen radiator. I don't have that the nipple on there to hook it up there, so I got this little piece. So water pump is on, heater hoses are on. Next step, I guess, is going to be to break into the LSX Concepts kit and let's start putting on some shiny stuff. Alright, so I have everything laid out here. I have the instructions. Now, up here, this is the high mount AC kit, so I'm gonna leave that alone for now, and I'm gonna start with the alternator and power steering brackets. I'm noticing, first off, they have here torque specs for everything, so I got my little Harbor Freight torque wrench there. I'm gonna use that to torque everything down, just because this is all aftermarket stuff and aftermarket mounting. I want to make sure it's exactly how it's supposed to be installed. But it looks like the first step here is attaching this front plate here to the block. So it looks like this little piece here is going to go into the head, then we got some spacers, and then the front piece with another spacer at the bottom where the alternator was screwed in down there. So I'm gonna pull this apart and let's start getting this stuff in the car. Alright, so I got everything laid out here, just as the instructions show. I'm not missing any parts. I'm also gonna go ahead and use some thread locker just to be safe. And one thing I noticed, these brackets are extremely light. I mean, they're relatively thick and they look like they would be heavier, but yeah, they are very, very light, so that's a good thing. But now I'm just going to proceed to the first step, and that is going to be to attach both of these plates to the front of the engine. So it looks like this little one goes to the top of the driver's side head, followed by some spacers, and then the big one goes on top of that. Then after that, we're going to be attaching the alternator. So let's go ahead and get these brackets on the motor. right, so the brackets are installed. Really went on without a problem. The only thing is the instructions aren't 100% clear on which order to do everything. It's kind of just like a diagram of how everything goes together. So it took me a few tries, but you want to screw this piece in here first, because this is a stud with a spacer attached to it. And you screw this piece of the block with that. And then after that, you could put this little screw through here and then go and put all the spacers through. There's two here, one at the bottom. And like I said before, these brackets are very, very light, so it's extremely easy just to hold them in place. Next step is going to be installing the idler pulley. It says here on some blocks there's like an upper mounting boss over here in the front of the cylinder, but if you look through there, I don't have a screw hole there. It's supposed to be behind this opening. There's nothing there. So if that's the case, this is a truck block. That's probably why. Maybe the LS, like the LS ones, have a mounting hole there, but mine doesn't. So I'm going to be using method 2, where pretty much you're just mounting the idler to that front bracket, and then a nut's holding it in the back instead of going directly into the block. So the next step is going to be installing the alternator. So alternator is going to go right up here. 2 bolts slide right through it, and that's really it. Then we just go onto the power steering pump. I ran into a couple of issues, but nothing major. The first was that my proportioning valve for the rear brakes was in the way. It was pointing this way, so there was no way the alternator was going to fit with that there. Very simply, I just kind of tweaked the lines, held it from the top and the bottom, bent it and twisted it over here, and you can see that fits absolutely perfect right in there. The other thing was, being I'm running these Holley valve covers, the way the coil is positioned, it was hitting the alternator here, and that wasn't going to work. So very simply, I just I unbolted the coil, I put the bolt back in there just to make it look nice. I added some spacers here, and then I just orientated the coil straight, and I just don't have the bottom bolt in there. But I do want to get a lock washer for this, just to keep this from like swiveling with vibration. But it's tight, it's not going to go anywhere. The spacers brought it up, so it's not going to rub against the bolt down there. Plenty of clearance. You see the alternator wire fit no problem where it used to be mounted down there. Ran it up here, everything's good. The same thing I had to do over here actually. I don't think I mentioned it with the AC box when I did the valve covers, was that the coil was not going to fit with the AC box here. So I did the same thing. I put it like a nut under there as a spacer and twisted it to face it this way. Haven't any problems with that. So that should be fine the way it is. Next step is going to be installing the power steering pump. But one other thing to note, I'm noticing that my battery cable might not be long enough for the alternator. You can see I have that down here. I have to somehow run that over to back here. Here's the stud. I got to see what I'm going to do with that. But for now, I'm going to put the power steering pump on, and then I'll figure that out a little later on. Just like that, the power steering pump is on. Once again, absolutely no problem, went right in. You can see it's pretty close against the block back there, but it fit without a problem. The other thing, I'm not familiar, this is like Corvette stuff, I'm not familiar with these pumps. I'm used to the F-body pump with the giant pulley without the holes. It's a lot easier installing this one with the holes in the pulley for one thing. You don't have to keep pulling this thing off. I was concerned about where the fittings were going to end up. I didn't know if they were on this side or not, but that actually leaves me with plenty of room where I could just kind of tweak the factory F-body hose and run it into here. I'm hoping it's the same fitting. I would think it is, just because the F-body LS1 pump had the same fitting as this, so I don't think they would have changed it. The other thing is the reservoir. I'm not really sure where I'm going to mount that. that's the fitting over here. I gotta just get like a nipple to screw into there to clamp the hose onto, but I'm gonna have to mount it somewhere over here. It's gonna be, one hose is gonna be coming off going to down there, and then this one here is gonna be the other one. But like I said, I'm not really sure where I want to mount it. If anything, I can always cut this hard line here and have it maybe come up over here and then just run this one over. I might end up doing something like that, being I do have this bit of room right here. But for now, let's start going on to the AC part of the kit. I'm just gonna leave the other stuff for later as far as figuring out the wire for the alternator and the reservoir. I just want to get everything mounted up, make sure everything fits and clears nicely. But we're halfway there, so let's get started on the AC. So here are all my AC parts. I noticed that the kit actually came with water pump bolts. I didn't even realize it, so I just went ahead and swapped them out. So now everything matches nice. The only thing I'm not sure about here is the belt tensioner, because I know there was an issue with the tensioner. I got an email when I ordered the kit. Some kits need the smooth pulley and some use the ribbed, and this doesn't look like what's in here to mount this tensioner. So I might have to run down to AutoZone and see if I could buy the correct tensioner if this isn't it. All right, I'm back. Now, I had a hard time getting this pulley, well, the pulley and the belt tensioner. I went to AutoZone, they didn't have it. I ended up having to go out into Jersey to get it, but I picked up a C6 Corvette belt tensioner. The only difference I'm seeing here, it looks like I need a flat pulley on there, and this is ribbed, so I'm pretty sure that's what this is going to be used for here. So I'm just going to, yeah, because that's the same diameter, I'm just going to pull this off and put the smooth pulley on there. And then here is the ribbed idler, and that's the one that goes at the top there. Which now that I'm noticing, I could probably return this and just use this one off of here, and that'll be the same thing. Yeah, the reason I don't have any of this stuff is because when I ordered everything, I was originally planning on getting the Corvette high mount kit from LSX Concepts, which is just this piece over here, and then I was gonna run the compressor down there and the factory LSA tensioner and everything for the belt, which would mount in the factory spot over here. But then I changed my mind because I realized that the compressor isn't going to fit with the header, and then in the end I ended up just going with the whole LSX Concepts kit, which I spoke to the guy from the company. He was very nice. He hooked me up with the rest of the pieces I need. He told me that I could just get the add-on AC kit, and then later on when I'm ready to order it and put the blower on, I could get the blower drive for the front. But the only problem was with the tensioner. This one I was supposed to send back for this style, but I didn't do that, so I had the wrong one. But no problem. I'm probably going to contact him, see if maybe I can send this one back, being I'm not going to need it. Right now I should have everything I need to go ahead and start putting this on. I also went and I picked up a 3/8 brass adapter here, and that is going to screw into the pump and allow me to put my hose on going to the reservoir. Over here is where the box is going to connect, and then I just got some more thread locker. So yeah, let's get started on this. bracket's all together. It looks like the only thing left to do is mount the compressor up and put the belt on. I did run into a problem where I had to take the water pump off because there's a short bolt right back there for the bottom of the AC bracket. So the pump had to come off to get to that. I thread locked that, installed it, put the pump back on. That's all good. I swapped the pulleys around. So basically I took the grooved pulley off of the belt tensioner and put it up here and put the smooth pulley that came with the kit on the tensioner. That's what the instructions say to do. Right now I got my compressor over here, just about putting these spacers in, and then these bolts go pretty much like through like that, I think, and the nuts secure it to the bracket. I'm gonna do that now. Once the compressor's on, I'm gonna fit the belt, and then I'll see what I'm gonna do with mounting this power steering reservoir. Alright, so the compressor is mounted. It's a close fit, but it does fit. I did measure everything out before I ordered this stuff, and you can see there's maybe like 3/4 of an inch there between the compressor and the strut tower, but everything does fit. There's 4 bolts, 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom that hold the compressor on. The only problem is with this low pressure AC hose, you can see it is way too long. The other one, on the other hand, for the high side, is actually pretty much perfect. You can see it just reaches up here nicely, and that I could just loosen and orientate it so it's angled like this way towards the battery, and then I'll probably just run it up under the pulley and connect it right there, no problem. But these are Hawks lines. I believe they make these in-house because these are specifically for a 3rd gen with an LS swap. So I think I'm going to call them up and see if they can make me a line. Same exact line, just a lot shorter. So the fitting would be approximately right over here, and it could just connect right like that. Literally maybe like a 6 to 8 inch hose, and that would be perfect. But the next step, I am going to work on the power steering. I got my hose off of my old pump. I'm just going to connect it back to the box, see if I have to bend it any which way to get it to connect to the pump here, and then I think I'm going to go and see where I'm going to mount the reservoir and get that all done. Power steering will be finished. Then it's really just getting the power wire for the alternator back on here and throwing the radiator back in, you know, filling the system up. Alright, so I got the hose on. I just bent a little bit. The fitting was the right size like I thought. It works, it's tight, it shouldn't be in the way of the fans or anything. But I want to look online if I could get some kind of maybe braided hose would be better and look a little neater, but for now this should work. I don't think it's going to hit the fans and the radiator. If it does, I'm just going to bend it a little forward or twist it up, but I don't think it's going to be a problem. This is all tight. I got the little nipple on there that's going to the reservoir, and then this is also going to the reservoir. So right now I'm going to go throw the belt on, and I think that's really it. The only other thing I might do is try to figure out where I'm going to run the power wire for the alternator. But other than that, it's just the belt and the steering reservoir, and then we should be done. Alright guys, time for an update. I still didn't get to the reservoir yet, but I did go ahead and put the radiator back in, I put the fans back in. I had to tweak the hose a little bit more for the AC, just to clear the, for the power steering, just to clear the fans. But I went and hooked up the wire for the compressor, so the compressor's all wired in. I put the hoses on. For now, I just went ahead and like kind of routed this like this, to kind of make the slack neat, make sure it's not rubbing against anything. This is a little close here, but once I get this hose, that should not be a problem. I might go ahead and put like a little kind of bracket on here, and then I could put a zip tie through it just to like pull this straight up and away. but the car's not running right now anyway. I'm not done yet, so I'm gonna leave that the way it is. I'm filling it up with coolant right now. I got the upper hose on. I just had to go and shorten this side of the hose because the water pump outlet is further to the right. The other one was on the other side. So I just cut this hose off, moved the steam vent T piece over, and then connect that up. That's all good. Hoses are all on, connected. I had to go ahead and trim the lower hose as well. It was too long and it was kind of bending, so I cut a little bit off, maybe about that much, and that fits really good. It's not rubbing or anything like that. And then I think I'm gonna try to get this alternator wire ran. The only thing with that, I don't know if it's long enough. I was thinking I can either run it along the fan shroud in the clips. There's factory clips where the fan motor wiring is. I can either run it through there and then just have it come up, zip tied to the power steering, and have it come up back here. The only thing is the wire is not long enough to do that. And I could probably run it underneath these brackets over the water pump, under the intake there, and then through there. I think it's just long enough to do that. That's probably what I'm gonna try. If not, I'll have to go and just get an extension, some kind of big like butt connector, or like a little power brick, just to extend this and bring it over. Catch can, I don't know where that's gonna go because kind of a lot of space is taken up here. I might be able to squeeze it over here. I just don't know how much room I'm gonna have with the hood. Otherwise, I'll just have to get longer hoses and run it remote somewhere, either in the back corner over there or mount it to the front of the radiator here. I'm not too concerned. I might just go ahead and bypass the whole thing for now and not even hook the catch can up until I find a way to get around that. The other thing with the reservoir, I'm looking here and I'm not sure. In order to fit this, because it's kind of tall, I'm gonna have to come up with some kind of a bracket. Either I could stick it here, if I could get the intake over it a little bit, or somewhere over here. The only problem over here is this thing's kind of long, and the fitting, if I have the hose on the bottom, I feel like it's gonna get kinked when I'm making a 90 to go over to the steering box over here. And the only way to get around that is to mount it a little higher, so I might just have to put a little separate bracket just to mount this. I'm just not sure how it's going to be with the hood, if the hood is going to close and hit it, or if that's going to be a problem. So this is really the biggest thing that's left to sort out. Everything else is pretty much done. I'm going to work on this a little bit more, see if I can get that wire hooked up, maybe get that power steering reservoir hooked up. I got to see if I have enough hose to run that all the way over there. If not, I'm gonna come back tomorrow and try to button everything else up. So it's the next day. Right now, I'm trying to figure out the power steering reservoir. Now, I'm realizing that this reservoir is just a little bit too big, because where the pump is, you wanna have the reservoir maybe about 10 inches higher than the pump, just because it's gravity fed and you need the fluid to go to the pump. If it's over here, it's pretty much at the same level, maybe a little bit higher. So the best place for me to really mount this would probably be like up on the firewall. So I went to AutoZone and I checked out this Dorman like universal reservoir. It's on their website, and I ordered it. I'm gonna go pick it up later on today, and hopefully that's gonna fit my lines. It's like a little kind of Honda style reservoir, and I should be able to just mount it like right up here, and I can just run the lines down to the box and the pump, and that would solve that problem. For the alternator wire, I did go and kind of run it under here, but I couldn't get under the throttle body because there's not enough room. I probably have to lift the intake up and slide it under, and then put it back down. But I don't really want this like sitting over the water pump, having it vibrate, chafe, causing any problems. So I'm not going to go that route. I went and picked this cable up. This is like a 70-inch battery cable, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this. I'm going to cut this off, and I'm going to run this wire that used to go to the alternator to my little fuse block down here that powers the pusher fans. And then the wire that is currently powering them, I'm just going to take that off, and I'm going to connect this as my alternator lead in place of that, just so I don't have a bunch of battery wires coming off there that I don't need. So this will replace the fan wire. This is going to replace that one, and that's just going to run along the fans and then curve here and right to the alternator, and then that will take care of that problem. And then really all that's left is going to be the catch can, but for now I'm just going to leave that off because I really can't find a good spot to mount it. It's kind of tall. Like I said, I'm not really happy with it. It's kind of crappy. It leaks a little bit. It was a cheap eBay part. So I think I'm just gonna pop this back on the intake, leave the catch can off for now, and I'm gonna see if maybe I could find like a little tiny, like pint-sized kind of can that I could just make a little bracket, mount it to the back of the AC here, and then I could just have it kind of sitting here like that. So right now I'm gonna cut this alternator wire off. I'm gonna run it to the fan and then run my new wire and see if I can maybe hook that reservoir up just temporarily so I could start this thing up and see how it sounds, you know, see how the belt runs, and just make sure there's no problems. I'm back from AutoZone and I picked up the Reservoir. I ran into a problem. It's a little bit taller than I thought. I was going to put it up here, but there's really not any room. The cowl comes down at an angle there, so the cap sticks up above that. I tried moving the clutch cylinder and it does fit, but it's still just slightly too high. I might be able to make it work if I tried and like screwed it in there, but I feel like it's still going to stick up a little more and the hood might rub on it. So for now, I'm just going to go and mount it over here. It still sits substantially higher than the other Reservoir, being it's shorter. So as before, the other one, if I mounted it here, it would have been all the way down to the bottom of the tray. Now it's maybe halfway up to the fender. I just went and removed the bolt for the horn, and I mounted, I'm using the bracket from the other Reservoir, and I just bolted it in with one for now, because I'm not sure how well this is going to work. I don't know if I'm going to have an issue with the fluid getting to the pump. So I'm just going to run it this way and test it out, see how it goes. The other thing is the outlet on here is a really, really big hose compared to the one that's on the car. So I went to the hardware store, I picked up this little piece of pipe here. This is a 3/8 threaded pipe. I'm going to cut this thick hose down. This is just going to slip into here all the way down. I'm going to clamp it, and then that's going to step it down to this size hose here. Alright guys, so as you can see, the accessory drive is finished. It took a lot of trial and error getting the power steering Reservoir mounted. I originally went and mounted it over here, but as I thought, it was too low. I started the car up, fluid wasn't getting to the pump, it was whining, no power steering. And then after a lot of trying to figure out where I wanted to mount it and where it's gonna fit, I did decide to just go ahead and put it on the firewall there. The hood closes fine, it's not rubbing or anything like that, so I'm happy with that. The only thing I had to do was move over the little vacuum box here. I think this is for the HVAC controls. I had to move this over a couple of inches. I moved the master cylinder reservoir for the clutch that was over here. I put that over here, and then it fit in there no problem, just barely fits, but it does clear the hood. I ran all the hoses. You can see I got my little drop down adapter right here. I got everything tied up and secured with zip ties. That's running down to the box, and overall that fits really well. So I'm gonna go over here, I'll start it up for you guys and show you how everything's lined up. Everything is perfectly straight, you know, there's no wobble from any of the pulleys. Everything is like aligned perfectly. Even on startup, like the first startup, there wasn't even a squeak or a squeal or anything from the belt. As I said, before I ordered it, I did go ahead and measure to make sure that everything was gonna clear. But I mean, this will tell you that this LSX Concepts kit will fit in a 3rd gen with minor modification. Let me just turn the car off and I'll go over that stuff one more time for you. So for one thing, a couple of things I ran into. Well, first of all, with the alternator, I was hitting my adjustable proportioning valve here. I'm not sure how much the stock valve sticks out. I think it was under the master. So you're probably not going to have a problem if you're still running the stock 3rd gen master and proportioning valve. But with mine, it used to be over here, and that was hitting the alternator. All I did was kind of tweak it and bend it over, and you can see it fits in there, no problem. That was the first thing I ran into. The second thing was, being I'm using these Holley valve covers, and this kit was made and retrofitted on like a stock car, the coil over here was hitting the alternator. So all I did to fix that, I went and spaced the coil up just so I could clear that valve cover bolt, and then I just straightened it out. I put the bolt and washer back in there and put some Loctite on there to make sure this isn't going to swivel or turn, and that fits perfectly. For over here, there's really nothing I had to do. Everything fit no problem, even with the valve covers. The lines are a little long, as I said. I want to see if I could go and get a shorter line for this. Maybe just like a foot line that I could just come out, loop, and connect to the compressor. But this will work for now. I tied it up out of the way. It's not rubbing. It should be all right. The next thing was, which isn't really a problem, but my battery cable wasn't long enough going to the alternator. Now, these are factory 4th gen battery cables, and I'm not familiar with exactly where they are routed on the 4th gens. I think they go across the radiator shroud, but I'm not 100% on that. But I was initially going to run it underneath above the water pump and behind the alternator. It would have reached for that, but I just didn't want it rubbing or chafing on the block. So I went to AutoZone, I got this battery cable as you saw, and I just ran that along the shroud, curved it under here, and then it goes to the back of the alternator. I took the rubber boot off the old 4th gen line, 4th gen wire, and put that on there. After that was done, the next problem I ran into was the power steering, but with the reservoir and the line. Now, the fitting in the pump is the same as the 4th gen LS1 pump and the factory 3rd gen pump. As I said, this is a factory 3rd gen completely stock power steering line. The only thing is it's a little bit long, being I only have to go from here to here. To get that to fit, I just kind of tweaked it and bent it. It's not kinked or anything. And then, as you know, for the reservoir, I got this little Dorman kind of Honda style reservoir from AutoZone for 16 bucks, because the one I got from LSX Concepts was way too big and it wasn't going to fit in this car. And I got that mounted up there. I really don't know anywhere else that you could put it in here where it's going to be higher than the pump. Unless you got like a different style, maybe you can mount it over here somewhere. But when the blower's on, the intake is going to be facing this way, so that's not going to work. I did think about putting it over by the master over here, but this area is pretty tight now with the hoses and everything and the alternator, so I didn't want to clutter this up, especially since it would have been right next to the hot exhaust header. But that does work the way it is. I just reused the LSX Concepts reservoir bracket. That fits great. And as you know, I have the LSA balancer on there, all pinned and ready to go. So really, a lot of the heavy, hard stuff is pretty much finished. I mean, as far as getting all this kind of like retrofit stuff to work with the alternator and the power steering reservoir and actually pinning the crank, all that's good now. Literally, I'm ready to drop the blower on, and it would fit, and I could get a belt on it, but I still have to do the fuel system, and I do want to upgrade that drive shaft because it is the original drive shaft. So that is going to be done before I put the blower on, because I do drive this car a lot. It is getting nicer out. It's pretty much June now, so I want to keep it on the road as long as possible before I actually have the blower on and can't drive it until it is tuned. But the next video coming out is going to be getting the AC working. I'm going to show you guys how to charge the AC up in this thing, and I'm also going to run through how I actually wired this up for my swap. So I have a wiring diagram I got online. I'll show you how I tapped into the third gen controls and how I wired up the pressure sensor and the relays and everything to get the AC to work with the LS swap, because I am getting a lot of questions on that subject. It is getting pretty warm out, so that is something I'm going to be going through in my next video as I charge the system up and we see how the AC performs with the new compressor. But to stay updated on my future videos, please follow me on Instagram. Link is in the description below. I'm always posting pictures, progress updates as I'm filming a video or putting parts on the car, so that's going to give you an idea of where I am with the project and when you can expect the next video to come out. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.